This is the worst way to invest in property, at least according to this investor. But here's the problem. This is exactly how I invest, which is why Grant thinks my portfolio sucks. Now, not to brag, I run the largest property channel in the country, almost 40,000 subscribers, and at my company Opus, we've helped over 2,000 Kiwis invest. So if Grant's right, that's going to be a problem. So is my portfolio trash? Well, to answer that, we're going to start by making the strongest argument possible about why Grant is right. Then we'll look at data to see what the facts say, and by the end of this, you get to decide if my strategy stacks up or if I'm just an idiot with a microphone. So what does my portfolio actually look like? I went from 0 to 6 properties in just under 6 years, and most of my investment properties are new build townhouses and apartments, thus smaller sections and developing areas. I didn't renovate any of them. I didn't buy a rundown villa, strip the wallpaper, rip out the kitchen, paint the walls. I just bought them, got a tenant in, and got on with my day job. And to some property investors, that's lazy. So let's make Grant's case for him. Why is this the worst way to invest? Well, honestly, some of these are pretty compelling reasons. You know when you buy a brand new car, and we'll call it for 100K, you drive it off the car yard and suddenly it's worth 60K because it's not new anymore. Well, the traditional thinking is that houses work the same way. The building, the physical house, loses value over time because it ages, it wears out, just like that new car. Not that I've ever bought a new car before, but the land underneath the house, that's what goes up in value. So, by this thinking, what should you buy more of? Land. And what has more land? An older existing house or a brand new build? The older house. Okay, so what's going to go up in value more? A brand new townhouse on 120 square meters of land or an old villa on 800 square meters? The old villa. And I can see you nodding along right now because this is what most property people have been taught, that more land equals a better investment. But I want you to hold on to that thought because we're going to come back to it in a minute. The other reason my strategy sucks is you can't renovate a new build. I mean, what are you going to renovate in a brand new house? Rip out the kitchen you just installed? Whereas if you buy an older house, you can renovate it. This is the BRRRR strategy where you buy, renovate, rent it out, refinance the property, and then repeat the whole process. And some of the most successful property investors in New Zealand do swear by it. Take Matt Gilligan as an example. He's an Auckland-based accountant who's invested in property for over 20 years and literally wrote the book on it. And he says that property lets you create wealth by buying a rundown house, renovating it, and then revaluing it. And my strategy, the new build strategy, doesn't let me participate in any of that. But it actually gets even worse. This is the part of Grant's comment that actually stings the most because he's not just saying that I bought the wrong type of property, he's saying that there's no skill in it at all. Because when I buy a new house, what happens? I wait. If the market goes up by 10%, my property probably goes up roughly by 10%. If the market drops by 15%, my property drops roughly by 15% as well. I'm just right in the wave, which is why some investors think that real property investors are out there on the weekends with a paintbrush, they're negotiating with builders, and go on any property Facebook group and you'll see it. People posting their before and after renos, the comments going crazy, and that's what gets respect in some property circles. So you buy a house worth 500K, you spend 50K on the reno, and now it's worth 600K. You created 50K of wealth, of instant equity, what feels like out of thin air. I mean, people like me, we're just market riders, no skill, no hustle, just sitting around hoping the market goes up. And look, these are strong arguments, right? I wanted to make Grant's case for him, and you've got millionaire investors with decades of experience saying that this is the right way to go. So if all of that is true, why on earth would I deliberately choose what some people think is the worst property investing strategy? Well, if you are enjoying this video, do me a quick favor and hit the like button because that's not how I know which videos I should do more of, and honestly, it really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Subscribing, that helps too. We're on our way to 50,000 subscribers, and you guys have already helped us build this channel into the largest property investing community in the country. And if you do already subscribe, you'll want to know if Grant's arguments are so strong, why would I deliberately choose what he thinks is the worst strategy? Well, here's the thing. When it comes to property investment, a lot of people think about what you do to the property And my contention, I believe, that not enough people think about the investment side. And to know if something's a good investment or not, you need to compare what you get out of it compared to what you put in. And let me give you a really simple example. Let's say you can buy a share in Apple for $200, or you could buy a share in Spark for $2. Now, let's say then that Apple goes up by $10 and Spark goes up by only 50 cents. Well, which is the better investment? Some people might think Apple because that's the one that made the most money. But that $10 increase, that's only a 5% return on what the share cost. Spark, that small 50-cent increase, that was a 25% return on the money you put in. So why wouldn't you just buy $200 worth of Spark shares and make $50 instead of just buying one Apple share and making only $10? Now, this is the mindset that we need to apply to property. You know, a lot of books about property renovation, buying rundown houses, adding value, a lot of those were written 15, 20, 30 years ago, but the world of property investing completely changed the maths in 2014 when the Reserve Bank brought in the LVR restrictions, because all of a sudden it gave new builds this massive advantage that some people still haven't caught on to. Because if you're buying older properties as an investor, you need a 30% deposit, whereas with new builds, you only need a 20% deposit. So if you take two properties standing side by side, both worth $700,000, the existing property, you need a $210,000 deposit. The new build, you only need $140,000, 70 grand less. Now, if both properties go up in value by 100K over the next few years, the investor who bought the existing property and paid a $210K deposit to get that 100K of capital growth, they got a 48% return on the money they put in. Now, that's a really good return. But the investor who bought the new build, got the 100K capital growth and put in 140K, they got a 71% return on the money they put in. Now, it's the same dollar gain, but a much higher return when it comes to the new build because you put less money in. So just like with that share example where Spark got the higher return, why don't you just buy more new builds and build a bigger portfolio, because that could potentially deliver a higher return. Not only do you need a smaller deposit when it comes to those new builds as well, you also get around the Reserve Bank's new debt to income ratio rules that make it harder for investors who buy older properties to grow their portfolio. And I talk a lot about these new rules because they have completely changed the game for property investors. The strategies that worked in 2006, they're not the same strategies that work in 2026. Because the game has changed. Now, I'm keeping this really simple and just focusing on capital growth, house prices going up with the examples I've just given you, but there is a lot more to the numbers than that. You've got cash flow, you've got potentially paying off debt, you've got tax, you've got valuing the renovation, and that's exactly why I built Opus Plus. It's a tool that lets you run the numbers on any property in New Zealand, whether it's a new build or an existing property, so you can see what works for your situation. The link's down in the description if you want to try it out. Now, this idea of new builds having a higher return only works if new builds and older properties go up at the same or a very similar rate. If house prices for new builds and existing properties go up at roughly the same rate. But, like I talked about before, some people think that buying a new house is like buying a new car. As soon as you buy it, it goes down in value. But I've got a problem with that analogy. First, cars tend to go down in value over time, but houses tend to go up in value over time. Second, there's a lot of research that shows that new cars lose a lot of their value straight away once you drive it off the lot, but no one in New Zealand had bothered to check whether that happened to new houses, which is why I paid Cotality, the biggest property data company in New Zealand, thousands of dollars to crunch the numbers and get the data. And so what we did is we grouped every property in 2008 that was currently built into two categories. Those that were brand new, built that year, and those that already existed. And then we tracked their values for the next decade and a half. And what we found is that in Auckland, in the first year, the new builds didn't go down in value. They went up in value by 6.4%. No new car effect, no immediate drop. Now, there were years that the older properties beat the new houses, like in the 12 months to 2011. Existing properties increased in value by 6% that year, while new builds only rose 2%. But other times, it was the complete opposite. Like in the 12 months to September 2014, new builds grew by 12% over those 12 months, nearly double the 7% that existing properties managed. Now, when you average it all out, the older properties beat the new ones in Auckland by about 0.6% a year. Very little in it. In Christchurch, it was the other way around. The new homes beat the old ones. And you've got to remember that some of that increase in value from the existing homes will be from renovations, people doing up the older homes, whereas that wouldn't apply to new builds. So some of this capital growth that we're looking in this analysis will just be from renos anyway. Once you strip out that effect, the growth rates are probably even closer than what I'm showing you. It's like two planes flying to the same destination, same speed, landing at the same time, but one ticket costs $70,000 more. I mean, which flight are you booking? But how is this the case? New builds have less of the value in the land and more of the value in the actual building. Isn't the physical building meant to wear out and go down in value over time? And isn't it the land that increases in value? Well, not according to the government. A fact sheet from the Beehive says that data indicates that on average, New Zealand buildings do not drop in value over time. And if you're watching this thinking, okay, the data makes sense, but I still don't know what this means for me and my situation, that's exactly why I built the Opes Wealth Pathway. You work with a financial advisor, a mortgage advisor, and a property manager who can help you figure out which strategy works for your situation. Because it's one thing to understand the theory on our YouTube videos, but it's another to know what's right for your situation. Now, if you want to check that out, the link's in the description to book a free session with the team. But remember how I said it's the land that goes up in value, not the house? Well, that sounds good, but it's not as true as you'd think, which is why I went back to my friends at Cotality to find out if houses with more land really do go up in value faster. In the 5 years to April 2024, Auckland properties on smaller sections, those with less than 300 square metres of land, grew by 4.6% a year. Properties on larger sections of over 600 square metres grew by only 3.6% a year. The smaller sections grew a full percentage point faster. That's the opposite of what most people believe. Now, in Christchurch, properties on large sections only grew 0.1% faster than small ones. Essentially nothing, it's a rounding error. More land doesn't actually mean more capital growth. It just means a more expensive house. Now, it might feel nice to have more space for a trampoline, but it doesn't mean that the property doubles in value faster. And actually, if we think about it, what do buyers care about? The house or the land? Well, we call them home buyers, not land buyers. And when people search for a property, they don't say, I want to own a great piece of land. I mean, some people will do, but most people say, I want to buy a house. House first, land second. That's what buyers care about. And when houses cost this much, like they do in New Zealand, people choose the nicer house, not the bigger section, if they have to choose between the two. So let's come back to Grant's comment. Is my portfolio the worst way to invest in property? Well, here's what I think Grant is missing. He's thinking about the property. I'm thinking more about the investment. His question is, what can I do to the property? My question is, what return do I get on my money? And when you look at it that way, less money in, same capital growth out according to the data, the ability to buy more properties faster because you don't have to follow as many of the Reserve Bank's rules. Well, that's why this strategy makes sense for me, especially since I don't want to spend my weekends renovating old dungers. I want to spend them living life and hanging out with my family, because the real wealth doesn't come from doing one renovation really well. It comes from owning multiple properties over a long period of time. That's the game that I'm playing. But here's the thing. Property investors get into way too many arguments about this kind of stuff. My strategy is right, your strategy is wrong, often fueled by influencers who want you to invest their specific way and maybe spend money on their specific coaching program, when actually it's about finding the strategy that works for you. I mean, I've laid out why I invest the way I do, but I don't think Grant's strategy is bad. He just looks at property investment a different way, as far as I can tell. I don't think he's an idiot. I think he's investing in the exact way that makes sense for him. And honestly, I respect that he's providing homes for Kiwis by doing up older houses, and I'm providing them too by building new ones. Both move our country forward. But is my strategy the worst way to invest? Well, maybe according to Grant. According to the data, I'm not so sure. But I want to know who you think won the argument. Drop Team Grant in the comments if you think that's the right way to invest, or drop Team Ed if you think my way's a better way to invest. And if you want to see how to turn one property into 5, watch this video next, tap the screen, and I'll see you there.